Hey guys, and welcome back to the Pong game tutorial for the Java video game tutorial series. Last time we just constructed our conditional if statements for our collision method, which gets called every update in game panel. Um, it's the balls method, and we just kind of threw that together last time. Doesn't do anything right now, but all we did was we just checked to see if with two if statements to see if the ball was inside the player's box thing, and we did that by first checking to see with the first if statement if the ball's x value, which is the top left of the ball, if that is if the x value is to the right of the back of the paddle, which is, to say that in mathematical terms, it'd be if x is greater than the player's x, because the player's x is the top left of the paddle. So we're saying if the ball's x is greater than, if the ball's top left is greater than the player's top left, so if it's to the right of the back of the paddle, and the second part also has to be true, and if the top left of the ball is less than the top left of the paddle plus the paddle's width. And that's just the mathematical expression for the right of the paddle. And it just checks to see basically if it's in the middle of the paddle, if it's before the back of the paddle but after the front of the paddle. And if any of those are true, then it must be within the paddle's x coordinates. So, and the second one just does the same thing except for the y direction. And with those together, if both those return true, then there has been a collision and we can handle that appropriately. And I'm just going to prove to you guys that this works. And I did that by, once it gets inside this if statement here, whatever happens within the second if statement happens when the collision goes off in the game. So we can put whatever we want in here. And whatever we put in here will happen when the ball collides with the player. But for right now, I just put a system.out.println, and all it will say in the console is just player collision. So we can see that visually. So let's see here. Let me move this over so you can see a little better. All right, now keep an eye on the console too when the ball's about to collide. Oh, see, there we go. The system.out.println got called when the ball was inside the player. Pretty cool, huh? Now I'm going to show you how we can, turn that into a practical thing. So we're gonna. So let's just think about this for a second. What do we want to happen when the ball does collide with the player? I mean, we can detect that now, but what do we want to have happen? What makes the most sense? Well, in Pong, the actual game, once the ball hits the player, it bounces the other direction and starts heading backwards towards the other player, and they keep knocking the ball back and forth until one of them misses. So what we need to have happen is when the ball collides with the player, it needs to turn around and go and start heading the other direction. So what I'm going to do is, we're in ball right now, so I'm just going to create another method in here. It's going to be a private method because no one else really needs to do anything with this. So I'm going to say private void reverse direction. And just as a heads up for you guys, the system.out.println thing, that is a really, really good way to debug your code. If you're having problems with your code and you're not sure if a certain line is even getting called at all, you can stick a system.out.println in there and check the console, and whatever you put in there will pop up on the console if that line of code gets called or if it gets to that chunk. then you can see that the program is getting into there in the first place. So it's a really good way to debug your code later on. So I just made a reverse direction method, pretty easy. This isn't really necessary, seeing how we're in the ball class and the collision method is also in the ball class. So we're gonna need to change some of the ball's variables, but like we could have just done that in here, but it's gonna be a little bit easier to understand, I think, if we do it like this. So that's basically what we want is when the ball finally does cloud the player and we get inside both these if statements, what do we want to happen? We want the ball to reverse direction. Simple as that. Pretty easy. So what does the reverse direction do? How do we get it to actually bounce the other direction? Well, think about it for a second. How does the ball move now? How do we have it moving? Right now we have it so every update it moves its x velocity, or rather it increases the x value by the x velocity, and the x velocity changes based on whether it's bouncing or hitting the wall or whatever. And so that's how our ball moves. It's judged by the velocity of the ball. And so what we need to do is we just need to reverse the velocity when that happens. When the ball collides, we need to tell it to start heading the other direction. And we're only going to do that in one direction, and I'll show you why. So the only thing, we're just going to have one line of code in reverse direction. It's going to be x velocity. And remember, we're in the ball class, so this is ball's x velocity variable equals negative x velocity. Now I'll explain what that means. Okay, that's pretty much all we need. So let me start up Pong again. I don't know why I closed it. That was stupid. So right now, it's going, the ball's going, right now it has a positive x velocity right now. Positive, now it's going negative, it's going to the left. So it has a negative x velocity now. And now it has a positive, and that's how it moves. A positive x velocity moves it right, negative moves it left. So by saying that the velocity is equal to the negative velocity, we're saying that we want to change the velocity to the other direction. So if our velocity is positive 4, like it is right there, not right now, but right now it's negative 4. But if it's going to the right, right here, right now it's positive 4. So if we say the velocity is equal to negative velocity, well, what's velocity? 4. What's negative 4? Negative 4. So, and it's kind of the opposite. If we're going left, then x velocity equals negative negative 4, which is positive 4, because the two negatives cancel each other out. So no matter what, negative or positive, by saying negative velocity, we can just say, just do whatever it is you're not doing. Just turn around. And we only want to do this in one direction, because if the ball is going down, like it is right now, and it hits the paddle, we still want it to go down. We still want to maintain its positive, or not positive, rather, it's up and down movement. We still want to maintain that. We don't want that to change. So it kind of hits the paddle and just bounces off the other direction. And it'll be easy enough to see that here. So that's all we need to do. When it gets inside the paddle, collision returns true. We get into here, and all that happens is just reverse direction. And we just make the ball turn this little ass around and start heading the other direction. So we can see that here in a second. Okay, that compiled okay. Okay. This is going to be awesome. Oh boy, here it comes. Boom! Nice. Alright, cool. So yeah, what's happening is it's hitting the paddle, the if statements are returning true, and in terms of the player, it's always going to be negative 4 pretty much when it hits. But what we're saying is when the collision happens, just reverse your X direction and start going the other way. That's all we're doing. And now I can show you guys if I'm skilled enough to do this. If we let it get behind me, it can bounce off the back too, but that's not going to matter because we're going to be checking to see if the balls hit either one of the sides, so we can give points to uh, either the computer or the player. So it's just going to reset the game, or not the game, really the playing field more like. It's going to reset that, so it's not going to matter if it gets behind the player. But it's pretty cool right now. Look at that. We have almost a full Pong game. Nice. I think what we're going to do next, though, is I think we're going to put in the computer and do our first little bit of AI programming so that the computer follows the ball as it moves and is smart enough to actually hit it back to the player. But this is a really good step, guys. It's starting to look really, really, really good. Almost like Pong. Well, I guess I will see you guys in the next video, and we'll work on the computer next.